Isn't construction great? I don't know about you, but the little Sims and workers and resources simply melt away at the very idea of nailing a board or two together, putting yet another stack of bricks on top of the other, or compacting a long line of crunchy gravel and soaking it in a viscous stream of petroleum tar. Face it, building something where there was nothing takes the cake in being the best thing ever. So, how about we make it a little bester? Last time in the Soviet Republic of Arab map, we saw way too many references to Fallout 1, which prompts us to maybe get off the spicy uranium rock for a second or two. I know, trucking out big tin cans of radioactive materials is such an incredibly lucrative affair, but there have been murmurs among the deputies of the Republican Council that we need to think even bigger. And we should. But there's still that very pedestrian and irritating matter at hand. How about we finally start manufacturing our own construction materials? Turns out, most of these are pretty much crushed stone with a few additives. Cement, crushed stone. Prefabricated panels, crushed stone. Asphalt, mostly oil, but also crushed stone. Gravel, yeah, crushed stone. The common understanding with these industries is that they aren't very profitable and that they aren't something you should build to manufacture exportable materials. But how not very profitable exactly are they really? Let's give it all a look, assuming for the rest of our discussion that we use 1985 prices and import the bitumen the coal our factories consume. Also, I believe that we should take the gravel quarry and the gravel processing plant as a single entity. The quarry doesn't need workers because a high-quality source and one good excavator can feed one big gravel processing plant and crank out an insane 94 to 95% profit. If the serious transport infrastructure needed to move 82 tons of gravel abroad every 24 hours doesn't scare you away, the gravel processor yields a very respectable 1,600 rubles a day, all for a puny 15 workers, a pinch of electricity, and 2 factories that pay off in 2 months. If you are seriously considering making gravel exports work, though, there are probably far more effective ways of doing therapy, but our first obvious conclusion is that you can easily get gravel for virtually nothing. But of course, we never go halfway in Arab map, so inevitably we'll build and try everything. The concrete plant yields 37% in profit and earns you 3 grand a day at maximum production. Making the cement you need to produce the concrete is a lot less profitable on its own. A more valuable conclusion here is that the smallest cement factory is just trash. It adds a lot less value, it isn't really that cheap, it has poor connection options, and makes as much waste as the big one. Next up, and this one is not going to be super impressive money-wise either, the asphalt plant. I'm being a bit generous here because imported bitumen predictably takes up 73% of the costs, and if you export that asphalt, you'll run a loss of 11%. Using it is still cheaper than importing it, but turning gravel into asphalt and then selling it does not make any financial sense. You're better off just selling gravel. But the biggest benefit of domestic asphalt, of course, is time. In realistic mode, road building is one of the most aggravating irritations and can take a lot longer than erecting the structures the damn roads actually lead to. So whatever speeds that up is great. Finally, let's look at the crowning achievement of 20th century construction, the humble and powerful prefabricated panel. On its own, the factory that makes them generates 1,900 rubles of profit a day at a 44% profit rate, which is brilliant, and the construction costs pay off in about 8 weeks. This is actually the tip of this particular production chain that concentrates the maximum possible added value in its product. So this is what you should export whenever your construction combine doesn't work to supply domestic demand. If we look at the chain of gravel, cement, and prefab factories as a single unit, you get 89% profitability, even with imported coal. Organizationally, the only snag here is that a single large cement plant can serve 11 prefab prefab facilities, and you need 12 gravel factories to quell the endless appetite of the whole thing for crushed stone. Let's not even think about the need to move 11 large train cars of finished product every day. But then again, long trains and aggregate conveyor connections make these insane combinations absolutely possible. And if you want to generate an extra 52 grand a day selling slabs of concrete, who am I to say no? A more down-to-earth approach aimed at domestic consumption involves building a big stone quarry, 3 gravel processors, and a single factory of every other type, adjusting the occupancy of the cement plant to cover the demand for prefab and concrete, and selling the surplus prefab panels you make as a sort of a relief valve for whatever you don't do enough construction yourself. And speaking of domestic consumption, I think it's about time we looked at a realistic, hands-on example of what kind of financial benefit having your own gravel industries and making your own construction materials can bring. So here's the town of Rabibala, the home of the uranium and meat industries we talked about previously. I have more plans for it in store and a little expansion is in order. We're going to build 10 top-quality prefab houses with a shopping center, a school, a kindergarten, a cinema, a sports hall, a police station, as well as all of the necessary streets, paths, container stalls, and some cables and pipes to connect the new neighborhood to existing utilities. It does sound like a lot, but even with imported goods and local labor, the cost of it all adds up to a relatively tame 500,000 rubles. I know what you're all saying now. Most of that is steel, and very often it might as well be. Let us look at the actual share of the costs each material takes in the construction of the neighborhood. Steel really is the biggest item, but not overwhelmingly so. This suggests we can cut a lot of construction costs without going into metal. So how does the picture change if we supply our own gravel, concrete, asphalt, and prefab? The picture indeed gets a lot rosier, slicing about 140 grand off the price of the neighborhood, a reduction of 28%. This is a tremendous boon for not too much investment. With the exception of the cement factory, these industries are cheap and will pay off very quickly as you expand your republic. With the gravel and its derivatives out of the way, you can see that now steel takes up most of the remaining expenses, putting a stop to any easy and effective improvements here. Now, making your own bricks, and especially boards, clearly isn't going to make a real difference, as they take up a tiny slice of the expenditure pie. In this context, it's probably more beneficial to start digging your own coal to cut the cost of concrete and prefab even further. In fact, unless you specifically want to build timber and brick industries, I'd recommend buying these materials and building up stockpiles of them somewhere near the general area of your current development so that your construction officers can use them as nearby pickup points. It's no fun quickly delivering all of the asphalt and concrete you need only for the project of the decade to be stalled by a truck with 2 boards in it stuck somewhere in a traffic jam at the customs. Gravel may not be the most glamorous of items in a game where you gleefully grind up cows into steak and move nuclear fuel in open-bed trucks through dense cities. To be frank, I was actually somewhat suspicious about the usefulness of gravel-based and other construction industries, and I'm really happy to have been proved wrong. The financial benefit is huge, and if you're starting a new republic, I can't but just tell you to build these factories right away, before constructing your first true money-maker industry. Paying between 1/4 and 1/3 less for every structure you ever build forever will quickly outweigh whatever loans you may need to initially take out. This is in addition to the low upfront cost, low demand for workers, the obvious benefit of speeding things up, and even a little bit of easy income once the full production chain is running. So go get it done, because the best time to do it was yesterday. In the meantime, we'll move our attention to another kind of rock that, after some work, can get you something a lot lighter than a shovelful of wet concrete. Cheers.